Welcome back, class 10, to your civics class. Continuing with the Prime Minister, we will study today the relationship of the Prime Minister inside the Parliament. In his relations with the Parliament also, the Prime Minister occupies a very unique position. Number one, it is on the advice of the Prime Minister that the President summons and prorogues Parliament and dissolves the Lok Sabha. What if the Prime Minister advises the President to summon or prorogue or dissolve the Lok Sabha, then only he can do. He cannot do on his own. Number two, the Prime Minister is the principal spokesman, chief spokesman and defender of the government in the Parliament. He is the chief spokesman and he will defend, protect the government in the Parliament. It is the Prime Minister who makes all important announcements of national policies. Whatever national policies will be there, it will be announced by the Prime Minister on the floor of the house. Floor of the house means inside the house. Now, he will not sit on the floor and announce. Inside the house, he will announce. Sometimes, ministers' works come under severe attack in the house. It is the Prime Minister who saves them from an unpleasant situation. The Prime Minister saves the ministers from the crude criticism which comes from the opposite party. There are issues like caste wars, reservations of the backward classes, corruption by the people in positions of authority, price rise, violence in the Kashmir Valley, which agitated the MPs. If an ugly situation arises in any of the houses, the matter generally ends with the intervention of the Prime Minister. See, there are some sensitive topics which are discussed in the Parliament. So, if any such sensitive topics are discussed and if there is an ugly situation that erupts from that sensational topic discussion, the Prime Minister acts as a mediator, middleman, and he pacifies the house. He brings peace to the house. It is a very, very important work of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister represents India at international conferences. There take place conferences of the head of the Commonwealth, heads of the non-aligned movement, SAARC, BRICS nations. Any important discussion, whatever takes place, the Prime Minister heads that conference representing India. At such conferences, India is represented by the Prime Minister. He has the power to commit India to the performance of certain international obligations. Whatever international treaties, whatever international obligations which is taken by India, it is taken on the behalf of the Prime Minister. Prime Minister as leader of the nation. Prime Minister is the leader of the nation. The Prime Minister is recognized as the leader of the nation. The nation looks to the Prime Minister for views on every subject. It expects leadership from him. At the time of general election, usually it is the Prime Minister for whom or against whom the people vote. Obviously, during general election, it is the face of the Prime Minister, the image of the Prime Minister which works. The people will vote for that particular person or against that particular person. What is the position of the Prime Minister? Very important. The Prime Minister exercises vast authority both on legislation and finance. Besides, he may inspire people by his personal qualities. Personal qualities, he might also influence people. No wonder that many writers have started referring to the parliamentary government as prime ministerial government. Basically, Prime Minister is the all, one and all of our country. What are the limitations of the Prime Minister's position and authority? However, there are some essential checks. Checks means you have to check the power of the Prime Minister's authority. In the first place, there may be dissensions within the ruling party itself. For example, the Prime Minister has to secure the willing cooperation of the important persons in the party. Inside the party, inside the ruling party, the Prime Minister has to win the confidence of the important ministers. If he does not have the confidence, if he does not have the important ministers in his own side, it is very difficult for the Prime Minister to continue. Secondly, there are the opposition parties that never miss an occasion to grill the Prime Minister. Obviously, opposition party, in whether he does anything good, whether he does anything which is not good, in all the cases the opposition parties will grill the Prime Minister. Thirdly, when no single party has majority, two or more parties come together to form a coalition government. It is essentially a weak government because the Prime Minister is always too anxious to satisfy the leaders of the various parties. Very, very important. See, if a majority party wins, a leader of the party is chosen as the Prime Minister. Okay, then it is okay. But if various parties come together, suppose there is no single party which wins as a majority. So different small parties come together and form a coalition government. So out of that coalition government, the president will choose a person who is the Prime Minister. At that time, it becomes very difficult for the Prime Minister to satisfy all his ministers under him, because all the ministers under him comes from various parties. Because all little weak parties have come together and formed this coalition government. So it is very difficult for the Prime Minister to satisfy those persons. So that at that point it becomes very difficult. Finally, the Press and Public Opinion Act effective checks what the press is telling, what the public opinion is regarding the Prime Minister, is also very important to check the power of the Prime Minister. Now, formation and organizations of the Council of Ministers. Number 1. The formation and organization of the Council of Ministers may be studied under the following heads. Number 1. Designation of a Prime Minister. Suppose a majority party, be very clear, suppose a majority party wins the general election. After that, what happens? The first step towards forming a new government in the designation of the Prime Minister. The Constitution provides that the Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President. The Prime Minister must be a person who can be sure of the support of the Lok Sabha. Suppose a majority party wins. The popular person who can win the support of the Lok Sabha is chosen as their popular face, who will be their Prime Minister. Therefore, the President does not have any discretionary power to appoint the Prime Minister. It is not on President's will who will be the Prime Minister. The ruling party, the winning party decides. The President can only decide who can be the Prime Minister if there is a coalition government. Number 2, appointment of the ministers. The other ministers are appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister. Who will take what department? Education, coal, forest, home, finance. Whoever whose name is advised by the Prime Minister, the President will give him a appointment letter. The Prime Minister has to bear in mind that as far as possible, all major communities and geographical areas of the country find representation in the ministry. Obviously, he has to, when choosing a minister, the Prime Minister has to see that all the states have been nicely represented in the form of the ministers, and all the majority geographical regions are covered. All ministers have to be the members of the either house of the Parliament. Obviously, now very interestingly, if a non-member can also be chosen as a minister, but he has to get himself elected or nominated to the either house within a period of 6 months after their appointment. Suppose a member of the Parliament is chosen as a minister, so he has to get elected either in the Lok Sabha or nominated in the Rajya Sabha within the 6 period after his appointment. A non-member can be appointed as the minister, but he has to be elected within 6 months after his appointment or nominated within 6 months after his appointment. Question came in ICSE. Oath of office and secrecy. The President administers oath of office and secrecy to the Prime Minister and other Union Ministers. Under oath of office, he affirms that number 1, the Minister shall bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of India. He will uphold the sovereignty of the integrity of India, and he will faithfully discharge the duties as ministers without fear or favor and affection or ill will. Obviously, an oath is taken. An oath is delivered by the president, and it is made sure in the oath that very diligently, without fear or favor, the minister and the prime minister will serve the country. Now, size of the Council of Ministers. The Constitution's 91st Amendment Act limits the size of the Union Council of Ministers, including the Prime Minister, to 15% of the total members of the Lok Sabha. Okay? But no provision is made for the appointment of Deputy Prime Minister or different categories of ministers, such as Ministers of the Cabinet rank, Ministers of the State, and Deputy Ministers. It leaves the Prime Minister free in this matter. So, once again, the 91st Amendment limits the size of the Union Council of Ministers, including the Prime Minister, as 15% of the total members of the Lok Sabha. But in the case of appointment of Deputy Prime Minister or categories of ministers such as Ministers of Cabinet rank, Minister of State, and Deputy Ministers, the Prime Minister is free to choose the number as he feels like. Now, Deputy Prime Minister. As long as Sardar Patel was alive, there was a post of Deputy Prime Minister. The post was terminated after his demise. It was revived in Morarji Desai, and on June 2002, Union Home Minister L.K. Advani was designated as the Deputy Prime Minister. That is it. In the next class, we will start with categories of ministers, which is very important. That is why I am taking it in the next class, because there are cabinet ministers, ministers of states, and deputy ministers, which you have to clearly understand. And tenure of office, salary, and cabinet committees, these are very simple. But categories of ministers is also simple, but you have to understand. So in the next class, we will start off with cabinet ministers, ministers of states, and deputy ministers. That is all for today. I hope you have understood. Read well, study well, and solve the question and answers. Okay, thank you.